This is lesson 13-4. We're going to be working with other triangles. Here's the launch problem. Try your hardest for me.
The 7th grade changes their plan for the art center on the school lot. They decide to split the art center into two triangle-shaped spaces as shown. What is the area of the space devoted to paintings? Explain.
The area is going to be 60 feet squared. Since you're dealing with a parallelogram, you can do your base times your height. So they got 40 times 30. And then, just like our right triangles, you're going to have to divide by 2. So half of 12,000 feet squared is 60 feet squared.
You can compose a parallelogram from an acute triangle. Suppose you have an acute triangle with height h and base b. To compose a parallelogram, first make a copy of the acute triangle, rotate the copy, and then push the triangles together to form a parallelogram. So you can use an acute triangle to compose a parallelogram with the same base and height as the acute triangle. A school club plans to sell cheering pennants at football games. Compose the triangle into a parallelogram to find how many square inches of cloth the school club needs for each pennant.
If we were to cut this part off, flip it around, and slide it so that the point would be here and it would come across this way, and then up this way, we would create a rectangle. So, like I said, we would flip this one around and then turn it so that this part no longer was here, and we made a rectangle. So since it says compose the triangle to a parallelogram, that is what we did. Find out how many square inches of cloth. What it wants us to do is find out what is the area of this rectangle or this parallelogram. We would be taking our base, which from this point to this point is 29.5 or 29 5/10. When we're going to be multiplying it by our height, which from this whole thing is 12. So I know that I'm only going to use half of that, which is 6. Again, the reason why I did this is because this whole thing right here is 12 inches, but what I did was I cut from here to here off, and I slid it down over here. So really I'm only going from this corner to the dotted line, which is halfway, so 6 inches. I then multiply. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 9 is 54, plus 3 is 57. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 5 is 17. I look to see where my decimal points are. There's only one digit after the decimal point, so I want one digit after the decimal point here. So I know that I'm going to need 177 inches squared. That is one way to solve the problem. Another way to solve the problem is to look at this pennant and copy the whole thing. So if I copied the whole thing, turned it around, I could make another triangle that went this way. So now I have a parallelogram, and we know parallelograms, we can do base times height. So our base is going to be our 12 inches. So 12 inches is our base. Our height is always perpendicular, so that's why I know to go to these numbers because of this little box. So our height is 29.5. I'm going to write that up here, 29.5. And I multiply these two numbers. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 9 is 18, plus 1 is 19. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. I have to add my 0. I then do 1 times 5, 1 times 9, and 1 times 2. I add these all together and get 354 because my decimal point will go right here. However, this is not the final answer. Because you added this additional part and you don't actually need it, you just composed a parallelogram, you would still have to do one more step in order to find just the area of this triangle. So we are going to take this number and divide it by 2. So 354 divided by 2. 2 can go into 3 one time. 2 can go into 15 7 times. And 2 can go into 14 7 times. And you'll have 0 left over. So I still get the same answer. This second way is probably the way that you should go, but I showed that first way just as another method to use.
Compose the acute triangle into a parallelogram to find the area of the triangle.
The correct answer is B, and here's how we get that solution. Compose your triangle. So this was the second method that I showed in the example problem. They just copy and paste, flip it around to make my parallelogram. Find the area by taking 1/2 base times height, or by saying base times height divided by 2.
You can compose a parallelogram from an obtuse triangle. Suppose you have an obtuse triangle with height h and base b. To compose a parallelogram, first, make a copy of the obtuse triangle. Rotate the copy, and then push the triangles together to form a parallelogram. So you can use an obtuse triangle to compose a parallelogram with the same base and height as the obtuse triangle. A nature club plans to buy a piece of land to keep as a nature preserve. The land is in the shape of an obtuse triangle. Compose the obtuse triangle into a parallelogram to find the area of the piece of land.
So what I have to do is copy this triangle, move it over, flip it around, and when I do that, it's going to create a parallelogram that looks kind of like this. Sorry, my lines aren't too straight. So this triangle is my version of this triangle. Flipped around, made into a parallelogram, we can do base times height. Our base is 180. Our height is off to the side, but it's 56. Remember that this diagonal is not the height. The height is always perpendicular to your base. So we're multiplying by 56. 6 times 0, 48. 6 times 1, 4, or 6 plus 4 is 10. Then we add our 0. 5 times 0. 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 1 plus 4 is 9. 0, 8, I'm adding 0. 10, I have no decimal points. So I have this really big number, however, only the shaded triangle is what I want the area of. So I know that I can just divide by 2. So I'm going to take this big number and divide by 2. 2 can go into 10 5 times. You drop your 0. 2 can go into 0 0 times. Drop your 8. 2 can go into 8 4 times, which is 8. That's an 8, sorry. Drop your 0. 2 can go into 0 0 times, so I know that my area is going to be 5,040 yards squared. Moving on to the got it problem.
What is the area of the obtuse triangle?
The correct answer is C, 34 1/10 feet squared. And here's how we get that. Compose your parallelogram so you can multiply base times height and then divide it by 2. What this has us doing is multiplying 1/2 times base times height. Again, both ways will give you that same answer of 34 1/10 feet squared.
The formula for the area of a parallelogram is A equals B times H, where A represents the area, B represents a base, and H is the corresponding height. The formula for the area of an acute triangle is A equals 1/2 B times H, where A represents the area, B represents the length of a base, and H represents the corresponding height. The formula for the area of an obtuse triangle is A equals 1/2 B times H, where A represents the area, B represents the length of a base, and H represents the corresponding height.
So hopefully you've noticed that for any triangle, whether it's a right triangle, acute triangle, or an obtuse triangle, the formula is going to be A equals 1/2 base times height, or A equals base times height divided by 2. We're going to find the area of this obtuse triangle. You're going to start seeing more numbers than what's necessary, and you're going to sometimes be tripped up with which numbers you're supposed to use. So first of all, you always want to find this perpendicular line. You know that one of those is going to be your height and one of them is going to be your base. I typically see that height is shown by a dotted line. So this 6 is the only number which is by a dotted line. So I'm going to use 6 as my height. So I know I'm going to multiply some number by 6. And then I take a look at this other dotted line and I just follow it until I get to this base. So even though this dotted line goes way out here, it's just extended so that it can show you the exact height. Because you don't want to use this diagonal line as a height because it's not perpendicular to the base. So in this triangle, the base is 4. So when we do base times height, we're doing 4 times 6. This is equal to 24. And then when we do 24 divided by 2, hopefully you know that that is 12. 42 divided by 12, or 24 divided by 2 is 12. So the area is 12 centimeters squared. And this is my final answer.
What is the area of the triangle?
The correct answer is B, 80 feet squared. This is how we get it. You can pause the video if you need to.
Suppose you know the perimeter and height of an equilateral triangle. Explain how you would find the area of the triangle.
Here is the way that you could have found the area. Divide the perimeter by 3 because you have an equilateral triangle, which means all sides of that triangle are equal. So when you divide by 3, you'll get the base of the triangle, and then you can use the formula 1/2 base times height to find that area. That's all I have for lesson 13-4. I hope that you guys have a really great week. Please try your hardest. Please come to class ready to learn. Please respect the sub. And I really hope that I can come back to a great comment that is left by the substitute teacher on your class. I'll see you guys next Monday.